Now, let's get into some TikTok reaction videos.
I'm so ready for this.
All right. Do you want to start with the AJ list or do you want to start with the ones that I downloaded?
Surprise me. I have no idea what's happening.
All right. So then let's start here. All right. So I have to go to this button. And then this.
Okay, you just said something really brilliant. Something that's super common in my comment section is women will explain that they have talked to their partners about their needs and about their marriage for years and years and years. It's not until they threaten divorce or actually get separated that their partners start to work on it. And I mentioned that to you and you said something that's totally brilliant.
Yeah, I know why that is. That's because as boys, we were socialized that unless you're being yelled at, it's not serious. So like from our dads, from coaches, every male that I knew, when they had a serious point, they yelled it at me. It was never a talk. It was never gentle. So I knew to take something seriously when I was being scolded, reprimanded, chastised, embarrassed.
Okay, so I have a lot I want to say about this. The first time I watched this, because I did click on, oops, wrong button. I did click on it to see, go away. I did click on it to see what the content was about.
Right.
And I didn't agree with it because though I did get yelled at, there were men in my lives who talked to me.
Right.
And the men who talked to me when I was a young man had an impact on my life, and some of them are still prevalent in my life. So, like, though there was screaming and yelling a lot, and a lot of drunkenness and things like that happening in my home, that was not part of my childhood. That was, like, part of me learning things. So, like, I wanted to be like, I don't even want to watch this because I disagree with what's being said here. The impact that had the most impact to me were the men who talked to me like I was a man, even though I was 8 years old. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
The other thing that I wanted to point out, let me pull that video back up so you guys can see. That gentleman, I would probably guess, is in his late 30s, early 40s. You think that's fair? Hair looks looking kind of gray. His skin looks good, but he's starting to get gray in the beard. So I'm probably going to guess late 30s, early 40s. That's not an excuse to have to get to the point where your woman is threatening divorce and screaming at you to start making change. That means that if you are at that age and that is still how you are responding to things, you have not taken any type of accountability in your life to start working on the things that you know is a fucking problem. That's not an excuse for people that are in their late 30s, early 40s. Like, that shouldn't be a thing.
I think that's useful information for young men.
Do you
18,
think that
19,
that's still
20.
the case, though? Because most of those young men have been fucking coddled so much.
Maybe. Okay, now let me think about it.
Okay. You want me to finish the video or you just want to pause?
I need to pause. Do I still think that that's the case? I see why you like my back so much.
It took everything I had not to say something that would get us kicked off of YouTube.
Okay. Do I think that's the case? You know what? You might be right. Teachers can get fired for anything nowadays.
Right.
And I'm certain if a gym teacher popped off on a kid, that could cause a whole slew of problems.
Right. Well, we also, I have to go back to the other screen so that it's not, oh wait, I can just turn the monitor off, right? Scene monitor. Yeah. We know that coaches are more prevalent in sculpting children than parents are right now.
Yeah.
There's studies done on it because kids respect the boundaries that coaches set because coaches will implement a discipline and parents will ignore the kids and let them do whatever the fuck they want. So there's a hierarchy there that is clearly defined and understood. And this is something that's been studied and it's been talked about at length. So knowing that, we know that coaches aren't treating children like that. They're not screaming at them and being that way. I got screamed at a lot as a kid. Like, 1980, like, my fucking life is very different than the kids that were living and growing up, even into the, like, early 2000s. There was an acceptable thing back then. It was normal. You'd get screamed at by other people's parents, like, but I didn't respond to that. You're not going to yell at me. Like, as a kid, I didn't have a choice. But as I started becoming a young man, I didn't give a fuck who you were. Like, I don't talk to you that way. You're not going to talk to me like that. And then I would just either disassociate or I would leave the situation because if you're not going to respect me, I'm not going to respect you either.
Yeah.
And if that's the motto, right? So in that statement, if you're not going to respect me, I'm not going to respect you either, having a woman screaming and yelling, I'm going to leave, threatening divorce, there's no respect there.
Right.
You're threatening to leave. You know what that tells me is that if you can just fucking live your life without me and you're willing to bounce out the door, then there's not enough of a connection here for me to even worry about investing in you long term, because you're telling me you're willing to walk out the door when things get hard. Because that's what it sounds like. Where's the respect in that? Things are difficult right now. I'm out. We don't do that shit to each other.
I agree. Devil's advocate. What if it's a case of him flirting with other women through text messages?
Then he doesn't respect her.
So at that point, would you feel the same way about a woman presenting the option of divorce?
Presenting the option of divorce
Yeah.
over somebody liking or flirting with a girl on the internet? No, I'm not.
No, like
okay
it's a
with that.
repetitive, like he's going out of his way and it's several women. Like it's a string of,
Has
okay,
has
I'm not
this
going to.
discussion been had before?
Yes.
Okay. Then I would suggest therapy first, or going to church and talking to like a group, or like maybe going to like a sex addicts class or something. There's so many fucking options that should come before the discussion of divorce is had.
Right.
And if you're having those discussions and men or women are aware that that is the last ditch effort, but it is on the table now, if things don't change, at that point, maybe that could be the wake up call for them to go, okay, I really need to get my shit together. But being in a
Yes.
toxic situation or a damaging or abusive situation is very different than just having, marital troubles and then threatening to leave because of it.
Yeah. The scenario that you just gave where divorce was never on the table and then suddenly it is, but we have all of these steps to get to that point. Excuse me. In my mind, that would only work if it wasn't repeatedly thrown in the face over little shit.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I was getting at.
Right.
On the same page?
Yeah. I just wanted to have a dialogue about it. I wasn't on the different page as
Yeah.
you.
Well, no, all of that was valid. Okay, I thought you were devil's advocating me, so
It was a devil's advocate,
Right.
but it's not that I disagreed with you.
okay. Okay, going back to the video.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I don't think, like in a lot of the settings I grew up in as like socialized as a woman.
Okay, wait a
Like-
minute. Wait. I have another thought that
Okay.
just popped in my head. So she's talking about as a woman, because girls should be raised differently than boys. We agree on that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
100%, right? Okay. Because we've had that discussion in our home privately a lot. So I know you agree with me. But knowing that that's the case, and knowing that most young men are raised in single mother households, and young men are being screamed at constantly and taught that that's the only way to get a response. When women become of age and men become men or adults, when people become adults, because let's be real, being an adult doesn't make you a man in my book.
Right.
That scenario, you can't blame the man. I mean, you can, because in accountability, he should have done the work to fix the problem. But as a young man, as you said, in the early 20s, late teens, even into maybe mid 20s, it's the woman who fucked that kid up from screaming at him and treat him that way. So
Yeah.
now you've got a generational cycle of the way women treat men. And then you wonder why men don't respond unless you start getting huffy and puffy and screaming and yelling.
Right. Because everything is a screaming, yelling thing.
Right. Because of emotional issues.
Right.
So knowing that, like, I responded best to a man talking to me as if I was a man, what does that speak to about the quality of having a good man in the home to help raise young men? Like this whole thing, the first time I watched this, I was like, I don't really want to do this. Like, this
Yeah.
is just kind of a stupid video to me because I disagree with it. Now that we're playing it back, I'm like, oh my God, epiphany. You want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like even our coaches, like some of them yelled at us, but most of them didn't. Like we were instructed, we were guided. But he talked a lot about how like in male spaces, being raised, like you're screamed at, you're yelled at, you're hazed. And so you're kind of trained to respond to like crisis.
Everything
Okay,
else-
so wait a minute. And now I disagree with that too, because yeah, we're hazed. We fuck with each other. You get any group of men together and they're gonna wrestle and talk shit. Hazing is a good thing. As long as people aren't dying from it, like being like picking on each other and like throwing shade at each other and even getting drunk and boxing it out, like that's healthy. It sets a hierarchy in the friend group and it makes men tough.
I think there are certain levels of hazing that are okay.
Well, there's a difference between bullying and hazing. You know what I mean? If you get like 4 dudes together and one of them gets drunk and somebody draws a dick on his face, that shit's funny.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing as like pushing him in front of a car or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, there have been what is the male version of a fraternity?
Mm-hmm.
There have been fraternities of males hazings where
people have died.
they have them starving. They
Yeah.
are letting them sleep for 45 minutes, putting them into sleep deprivation and shit.
Yeah. That's not the same thing. That's a very big extreme when saying hazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember coaches screaming, but it's always like, go run, run, run. You know what I mean? Like my
Never
coaches,
anything degrading.
my coaches never degraded me. Right. That always came from the house.
This is brainstorming. Everything else is an idea. Like sad, super sad.
That's crazy.
All right. Any final thoughts on that one?
I could see how one could follow that thought process. It makes sense. If you are a man who, anytime anything serious was happening, you got screamed at for it. There was never a calm conversation about anything. I could see how one would have that thought process. But by the time you're in your mid-20s, early 30s, I would expect one to have understood that that's not the way life is.
Right.
That's the way that your life was as a child in the home that was cultivated for you. But now you can cultivate your own. And I do find it as an excuse going forward.
Right. So in that video, then, speaking solely on that video, it wouldn't matter if it was a woman or a man. Right? Because everyone screamed at him. So does he go to work and tell his boss to get fucked because the boss isn't screaming? Like that, life doesn't work that way.
Right.
You can't.
Yeah.
I think that's an extreme exaggeration. Or maybe that's just their life experience and I just don't view it the same way. But like, I don't know. It kind of makes sense, but it kind of doesn't.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed that, found it entertaining, funny, or even learned something you didn't know before, share it. And if you're not subscribed, why aren't you? And for those of you who want to support us, get access to exclusive content and live streams, we do have a Patreon. All the links are in the description.